Hello guys, the last video was about how to set up Redux and basic concept of Redux and in this video we will learn about async action. We will call an API. Until the response received, we will spin a spinner based on a state. Then we will render our state if the API call was a success, and if there is any error, we will render another error state. If you have not checked the last video, go check that out first. There we have set up the boilerplate for Redux that we'll be using in this video. Now let's find how this gonna work. We have to fetch data from a server. I am using dummy API for this tutorial. First let's check how the state will be. There is a loading state that will render our loading state for the app until the data fetch. Then there will be a data state. In my case this is user info because I am fetching user information, and this will be rendered when the data fetch successfully. And there will be an error state. If anything goes wrong and the API returns error, it will store there. And I like to have a boolean is error that will be true if there is an error. No more theory, let's get into coding. Before everything, we need to install two things, Redux Thunk and Axios. Redux Thunk is a middleware that gives us much ability, we will talk that later. And Axios, I prefer this package for data fetching over Fetch API. And also, we will install our Redux dev tools. Now, you can use these commands to install those. So now set up our action type. For that, create useraction.types.js. As discussed earlier, there will be three action types. Those are request user info fetch, it will dispatch when we request fetching user info. Success user info fetch, it will dispatch when we get data from the API. Failure user info fetch, it will dispatch when there is any error. So now let's set up our reducer. In our user reducer.js file, in the initial state, there will be four states. Is loading, currently set to false. User info, currently set to null. Is error, currently set to false. And error, currently set to null. Now let's set up our case. For case request user info fetch, we will set is loading to true and is error to false. And for the success user info fetch, we will set is loading to false, is error to false, user info to payload, which will be sent by the action. And for failure user info fetch, we will set is loading to false, is error to true, and error, which will be the payload passed in the action. Now set up our action. There will be an action for request user info fetch. In this action, we will return only the type, request user info fetch. And another action will be success user info fetch. It will receive our data and we will return the type and the payload. The type will be success user info fetch. For failure, we will have failure user info fetch action. It will receive an error and the type will be failure user info fetch. Payload will be error. Now let's set up our root reducer. In the root reducer, as we discussed in the previous video, there will be a key value pair. So let's import our reducer and we pass inside combine reducer with a key of user and the value user reducer. Now let's set up our Redux Thunk inside our Redux wrapper component. To set up Redux Thunk, let's import thunk middleware from Redux Thunk and apply middleware from Redux. Now before setting Redux Thunk, let's set up our Redux dev tools. So let's create a function bind middleware, because in this function we will bind our middleware. Let's take argument named middleware, and if the project is in production, we don't need our dev tool. So if the project is in not production, then we will import compose with devtools from Redux DevTool extension, and we return it with the argument of apply middleware, and then inside apply middleware we will pass all of our middlewares. And if not in production, then we will return apply middleware, and inside apply middleware we will pass our middleware. And now inside create store, we need to pass another argument to set up Redux Thunk. We pass bind middleware as the another argument to the create store. And inside bind middleware, we will pass our Redux Thunk middleware. Now, as I talked earlier, the Thunk middleware gives us special ability. It gives us the power of creating action creator. That action creator will return a function that doesn't need to be a pure function, and that function get the dispatch as an argument. Now set up our action creator inside our user action.js. Now let's create our action creator. I will name this action creator fetch user info. It returns a function. That function receives the argument dispatch dispatch, and inside the function, before fetching user info, let's dispatch request user info fetch. Then we will call API using access. With the API endpoint, we have to pass our headers, the app ID I have set up in my .env file. Then when we receive a response and it is success, then we'll dispatch success user info fetch with the response data. And if there is any error, we'll extract the error message and then we'll dispatch failure user info fetch with the error and then throw the error. As we completely set up our action creator and everything is ready, now let's take it into action. Now I have set up this component. In this button click, we will render loading, and as the data arrives, we will render the data. If there is an error, we will alert the error for now. Now dispatch this action when the button click. Now as we dispatch our action creator, for visibility we need our data. So let's get our states. Inside our user details card, to get the state we need our uselector hook. And then we extract our user state, and then if there is loading is true, then we will spin a spinner, and if there is data, we will render our data. So for image, from API we will get picture and the user info with the email. Now let's render our states. As everything is ready, now let's check whether it is working or we write a piece of shit until now. As we set up our Redux dev tools, for using it, you can install it from your extension store of your browser. For Chrome, it is Web Store. And after installing it, you can click on this icon and explore the states and others functionalities. I will keep it for you to explore more. And in browser, it is working as we want. But as the page reload, the data clears. What about we can persist data? I am here for that. In the next video, we will working on the persisting Redux data in the local storage in an efficient way. So if you haven't subscribed yet, subscribe now. If you like the video, please leave a like. That means a lot. Thank you. See you in the next video.